You're so predictable, Ethan. That's why I'm bored. Cassie's words cut through the chatter at Romano's Steakhouse like a blade through butter. The entire table went silent. Van Morrison's brown-eyed girl played softly in the background, but it might as well have been a funeral dirge. I looked up from my medium-rare ribeye, fork halfway to my mouth, and met my wife's cold blue eyes. Around our table sat her usual crew. Van, the Instagram queen with her perfectly contoured face. Jen, the enabler who laughed at everything Cassie said. Marcus, Trey's gym buddy with biceps bigger than his brain. And of course, Trey himself. Trey Bowers, 34 years old, personal trainer extraordinaire, with abs you could grate cheese on and the personality of wet cardboard. Predictable how? I asked, setting down my fork with deliberate calm. Cassie leaned back in her chair, a smirk playing at her glossy lips. Everything about you. Your routine, your jokes, She gestured vaguely. Everything. It's like being married to a human calendar. Van giggled, hiding behind her wine glass. Jen nodded enthusiastically like a bobblehead. Marcus grunted what might have been agreement. Trey just stared at me with those vacant blue eyes, probably calculating how many protein shakes he could fit into this conversation. Give me an example, I said, cutting another piece of steak. Seriously? You wake up at 6:15 every morning, make coffee with exactly 2 sugars, check your security company emails, shower for exactly 12 minutes, and eat the same breakfast every single day. Toast, scrambled eggs, orange juice. No pulp. Cassie counted off on her manicured fingers. You wear the same 3 suits to client meetings, drive the exact same route to work, and come home at 5:30 on the dot. That's called being responsible, I replied. Some people call it reliability. Some people call it boring, Van chimed in, emboldened by wine and Cassie's approval. I smiled, actually smiled, because what none of these brilliant minds knew was that my predictable nature had led me to install security cameras throughout our house 6 months ago. Motion-activated, voice recording, cloud-stored security cameras that had captured some very interesting conversations between my dear wife and her trainer. You know what? I said, taking a sip of my beer. You're absolutely right. Cassie blinked, clearly expecting an argument. What? I am predictable, boring even. So boring that maybe we should shake things up. I looked around the table, making eye contact with each of them. What do you think about an open marriage? The silence that followed was deafening. Van's mouth dropped open. Jen choked on her wine. Marcus looked confused, as usual. Trey's eyebrows shot up so fast I thought they might achieve orbit. But Cassie? Cassie's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. Are you serious? She asked. Dead serious. Life's too short to be predictable, right? We should both be free to explore our options. I raised my beer bottle. To unpredictability. Cassie grabbed her wine glass so fast she nearly knocked over the breadbasket. To unpredictability, she echoed, clinking her glass against my bottle. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that our prenup contained a very specific clause about infidelity. A clause that would cost her everything if she acted on it. A clause that my predictable lawyer brain had insisted on, and that she'd signed without reading because she was too busy planning our honeymoon to Cabo. As I watched Trey's hand brush against hers under the table, I couldn't help but grin. Game on, honey. 3 days after our dinner revelation, Cassie was practically vibrating with excitement. She'd been texting constantly, giggling at her phone like a teenager, and had suddenly developed a passionate interest in working out at Trey's gym. I was in my home office, supposedly reviewing contracts for Harlan Security Solutions, but actually monitoring the live feed from our kitchen camera. Cassie was on the phone with Van, pacing back and forth in her yoga pants and sports bra. I can't believe he just agreed like that, she was saying. 20 years I've been waiting for him to show some spontaneity and boom, open marriage. Van's voice crackled through the speaker. Girl, you hit the jackpot. Trey's been asking about you nonstop since dinner. He wants to know if you're serious. Dead serious. Ethan practically gave me permission. He said we should both explore our options. Cassie opened the refrigerator and grabbed a bottle of water. I'm meeting Trey at the gym in an hour for a private training session. They both dissolved into giggles. I minimized the security app and opened my email, scrolling to a message from my lawyer, David Chen. The subject line read, Prenup Clause 7.3, Infidelity Provisions. David had been thorough. Any documented proof of adultery would trigger an immediate asset freeze, with the cheating party forfeiting their claim to joint property, investments, and custody rights. The evidence had to be substantial: photos, videos, witness testimony, or recorded admissions. Thanks to my predictable security system, I was about to have all three. My phone buzzed. A text from Joel Martinez, my best friend since college and former Dallas PD detective. "Beer tonight? Sarah's working late and I'm bored." "Can't. Surveillance duty," I texted back. "Surveillance? You finally hiring that PI to tail Cassie?" Something like that. Joel knew about my suspicions. He'd been the one to recommend the security system after catching his own ex-wife cheating 3 years ago. Unlike me, he hadn't been smart enough to have a prenup. Cost him half his pension and his house. At 4:30, Cassie emerged from our bedroom looking like she was headed to a magazine photo shoot instead of a gym. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, her makeup was flawless, and her workout outfit probably cost more than most people's car payments. "I'll be late tonight," she called out, not bothering to come into my office. "Trey's putting me through an intensive session." "I bet he is," I muttered, watching her grab her keys and head for the garage. The house felt different after she left, quieter, but also charged with possibility. I opened my laptop and navigated to the tracking app connected to her car's GPS. A little blue dot showed her location moving toward downtown Dallas and Apex Fitness. My phone rang. David Chen. "Ethan, I got your message about potentially invoking the prenup clause. You sure about this?" "Getting more sure by the minute. You know this will get ugly, right? Cassie won't go down without a fight." I watched the blue dot stop at the gym. "She started this fight, David. I'm just going to finish it." "What kind of evidence are we talking about?" "The kind that will hold up in court. Video, audio, GPS tracking, witness statements, all legally obtained from my own property and vehicles." David was quiet for a moment. "Jesus, Ethan, you really are predictable. Predictably thorough. That's what she doesn't understand. Predictable doesn't mean stupid." After hanging up, I opened a beer and settled in to watch the show. The gym's parking lot camera, publicly accessible through their website's safety features, showed Cassie's white BMW pulling into a spot next to Trey's lifted Ford truck. This was going to be interesting. For 2 weeks, I watched my marriage dissolve in high definition. Cassie wasn't subtle about her affair with Trey. She was posting cryptic Instagram stories about finding herself and exploring new experiences. She started buying new lingerie, not for me, and coming home at increasingly ridiculous hours. The security cameras captured everything. Cassie on the phone with Van, describing Trey's body in detail that would make a romance novelist blush. Cassie and Jen planning elaborate lies about girls' nights that were actually hotel rendezvous. Cassie in our kitchen, FaceTiming with Trey while I was supposedly at work, both of them half-dressed and giggling. But the real goldmine came on a Thursday evening when Cassie hosted her monthly wine night. I'd made myself scarce, supposedly at a client dinner, but I was actually at Joel's house, watching the live feed on my laptop. "I can't believe how good this feels," Cassie was telling her audience of enablers. She was on her third glass of Pinot Grigio, and her inhibitions were in the wind. "It's like I'm alive again. Trey makes me feel things I haven't felt in years." "What about Ethan?" Jen asked. "Doesn't it feel weird?" Cassie waved dismissively. "Ethan's clueless. He thinks I'm actually going to yoga classes and book clubs. He's so trusting, it's almost sad." Van leaned forward conspiratorially. "So what's the plan? Are you going to leave him?" "Eventually, but first, I want to have my fun. Ethan's not going anywhere. He's too predictable to surprise me with divorce papers. Besides, his business is doing really well right now. Why should I walk away from financial security when I can have the best of both worlds?" Marcus, who'd been quiet up until now, suddenly spoke up. "Trey's getting serious about you, Cassie. He's talking about asking you to leave Ethan." Cassie's expression shifted. "He is? Yeah, he thinks Ethan's a pushover. Says any man who agrees to an open marriage is probably a coward who won't fight for his woman." I looked at Joel, who was watching over my shoulder. "They're calling you a coward now." "Let them," I said, taking notes on everything they were saying. "Cowards don't usually have this much evidence." On screen, Cassie was getting more animated. "You know what the funny thing is? Ethan thinks he's so smart with his little security business and his routines, but he has no idea what's happening right under his nose." "Like what?" Van asked. "Like the fact that Trey and I have been using his Tesla for our meetings. The back seat folds down completely flat, and Ethan never checks the car. We've been all over Dallas in that thing." The women erupted in laughter. I made another note. Check Tesla's internal camera system. That's actually genius, Jen said, using his own car against him. That's not even the best part, Cassie continued. Ethan's so obsessed with his work that he doesn't notice anything. I could probably bring Trey home for dinner and Ethan would just ask him about his workout routine. More laughter, more evidence, more rope for Cassie to hang herself with. Joel shook his head. She's really going all in on this. Good, I said. The deeper she digs, the harder she falls. The conversation continued for another hour, with Cassie detailing her affair in increasingly damaging detail. She talked about using our joint credit card to pay for hotel rooms. She described lying to our daughters about where she was going. She even admitted to going through my emails and computer files, looking for evidence that I might be cheating too. I was hoping to find something on him, she said. Some dirt I could use if things got messy. But he's exactly what he appears to be. Boring, faithful, predictable Ethan. By the time the wine night ended, I had enough recorded evidence to bury her in divorce court. But I wasn't done yet. Cassie had called me predictable, boring, a coward. She thought she was smarter than me, more sophisticated, more deserving. She was about to learn just how wrong she was. The next morning, while Cassie was at her yoga class, which my GPS tracking showed was actually Trey's apartment, I decided to investigate the Tesla situation. Our Model S was parked in the garage, looking innocent enough. But Tesla's internal security system was more sophisticated than most people realized. The car's cameras recorded continuously when Sentry mode was activated, and the footage was stored locally until manually deleted. I connected my laptop to the car's system and started scrolling through the files. What I found was better than anything I could have hoped for. Video after video of Cassie and Trey using my car as their personal love nest. Parking lots across Dallas, the beach at White Rock Lake, even the parking garage of Cassie's real estate office. The audio was crystal clear thanks to the car's sensitive microphones. In one particularly damaging clip from the previous week, Cassie was straddling Trey in the back seat while discussing their future plans. "When are you going to tell Ethan about us?" Trey was asking, his hands roaming freely. "Soon," Cassie panted. "I'm just waiting for the right moment. Maybe after his big presentation next month. I don't want to distract him from work." "You're too nice to him. The guy's a loser, Cassie. You could do so much better." "I know, baby, but I have to be smart about this. Ethan handles all our finances, and I need to make sure I get my fair share when we split." Trey's laugh was ugly. "Fair share? You deserve everything. You're the one who made his boring life interesting." "That's sweet, but it doesn't work that way. We have a prenup." My blood ran cold. She knew about the prenup? "What kind of prenup?" Trey asked. "The usual stuff. What we brought into the marriage stays separate, joint assets get split 50-50, that kind of thing." I almost laughed out loud. She had no idea about the infidelity clause. She'd signed the papers without reading them, just like I'd suspected. "Well, if he's stupid enough to agree to an open marriage, he probably won't fight the divorce," Trey said. "Exactly. Ethan's not a fighter. He's a negotiator. He'll want to keep things civil for the girls." "Wrong again, sweetheart." I copied all the Tesla files to an encrypted drive and sent copies to David Chen. Then I did something that would have made my predictable reputation proud. I started planning. The first phase was simple reconnaissance. I needed to know Trey's schedule, his habits, his weaknesses. I needed to understand the full scope of Cassie's deception. And I needed to start building my case methodically, like the security professional I was. I called Joel. "I need a favor," I said when he picked up. "Go ahead." "I need you to do some background checking on a guy named Trey Bowers, personal trainer at Apex Fitness. Find out everything you can: finances, criminal history, employment record, ex-girlfriends, everything." "This about Cassie?" "This is about making sure I have all the facts before I make my move." Joel was quiet for a moment. "You know, most guys would have confronted her by now. Most guys don't have 20 years of marriage and 2 daughters to think about. I'm not going to blow this up until I know exactly how it's going to land." "Fair enough. Give me 48 hours. After hanging up, I sat in my garage, looking at the Tesla that had become an unwitting accomplice in my wife's betrayal. Cassie thought she was being clever, using my own car against me. But, like everything else she'd done, She'd underestimated just how thorough my predictable nature could be. My phone buzzed with a text from Cassie. Yoga running late? Don't wait up. I texted back, no problem, love you. The lie came easily now, but it wouldn't be a lie much longer. Soon Cassie would understand the difference between predictable and stupid. And by the time I was done, she'd never call me boring again. Joel called me at work 2 days later with his report on Trey Bowers. I was in my office at Harlan Security, reviewing proposals for a new corporate client, but I pushed everything aside to listen. Your boy Trey's got some interesting history, Joel said without preamble. Want the highlights or the deep dive? Everything. Born and raised in Plano, high school football star until he blew out his knee senior year, bounced around community college for a while, never graduated, got his personal trainer certification 5 years ago. He's worked at 4 different gyms since then. Why the job hopping? That's where it gets interesting. 2 workplace misconduct complaints at his previous gyms. Nothing that stuck, but enough to make him persona non grata. Apex hired him 6 months ago, probably because they were desperate. I made notes as Joel continued. Financially, he's a mess. 3 credit cards maxed out, behind on his truck payments, living in a studio apartment that costs more than he makes. His Instagram makes him look successful, but it's all smoke and mirrors. Criminal history? Clean record, but I talked to a buddy who works private security at the clubs downtown. Trey's known as a player. He targets married women specifically, older, established, looking for excitement. Classic predator behavior. My grip tightened on the phone. How many women? At least 5 in the past 2 years that my guy knows about. Always the same pattern. He gets them to leave their husbands, promises them the world, then dumps them once the divorce is final and the money's gone. Son of a witch. Gets worse. One of his ex-targets, a woman named Linda Morrison, tried to warn Cassie about him last week. Approached her at the gym. Cassie told her to mind her own business and had Trey ban Linda from the facility. I closed my eyes. Even when someone tried to help her, Cassie was too arrogant to listen. There's one more thing, Joel said. Trey's been bragging to his buddies about his rich married girlfriend who's going to fund his personal training studio. He's already been looking at commercial real estate. Using what money? Yours, apparently. He thinks Cassie's going to clean you out in the divorce. I was quiet for a long moment, processing everything Joel had told me. Cassie wasn't just cheating on me. She was being systematically manipulated by a professional con artist. Part of me wanted to warn her, to protect her from what was coming. But then I remembered her laughing with her friends about how clueless I was, how boring, how predictable. Joel, I need another favor. Name it. I want you to approach Linda Morrison, get her full story about Trey. If she's willing to go on record, I'll pay her legal fees. You think she'll do it? I think a woman who tried to warn my wife deserves a chance to tell her story. After hanging up with Joel, I sat in my office, staring out at the Dallas skyline. 20 years of marriage, and it had come to this. Cassie was planning to destroy our family for a man who saw her as nothing more than a paycheck. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd assumed that predictable meant passive. My phone rang. David Chen. Ethan, I've reviewed all the evidence you sent me. It's solid. More than solid. It's airtight. If you want to proceed with divorce proceedings, we can have papers drawn up within the week. Not yet, I said. I want to give her a little more rope first. How much more rope are we talking about? I thought about Cassie's wine night confession, about Trey's financial desperation, about the Tesla videos that kept accumulating in my encrypted files. Enough to hang herself with. The opportunity I'd been waiting for came 3 weeks later. Cassie announced that she was attending a real estate conference in Austin for the weekend. Her story was detailed and convincing. She even showed me the conference website and her hotel reservation. But my GPS tracking told a different story. She was going to a resort in Tyler, Texas, about an hour east of Dallas. The same resort where Trey had posted Instagram photos from his guy's weekend the previous month. This was it, the smoking tool I needed. I called Joel Friday morning. Remember that favor I mentioned? I need it this weekend. What are we doing? Road trip to Tyler. I need witnesses and backup. This sounds like trouble. The legal kind. I'm not going to do anything stupid, but I need someone there to verify what we find. Joel was quiet for a moment. You sure about this, Ethan? Once you pull this trigger, there's no going back. She pulled the trigger the night she called me predictable and boring in front of her friends. I'm just returning fire. We drove to Tyler in my pickup truck, following the GPS coordinates from Cassie's phone. The Willow Creek Resort was exactly the kind of place Cassie would choose. Expensive, secluded, and romantic. The kind of place she used to beg me to take her for our anniversaries. I parked in the visitor lot and called the front desk from my cell phone. Hi, I'm trying to reach my wife, Cassie Harlan. She's staying with you this weekend, but I can't remember her room number. I'm sorry, sir, but we don't have anyone registered under that name. Maybe it's under her maiden name? Cassie Williams? No, sir. No Williams either. I thanked them and hung up. She's not registered under her own name. Joel nodded toward the resort entrance. So how do we find her? We don't have to. She'll find us. I pulled out my phone and sent Cassie a text. Hope the conference is going well. Love you. Her response came back immediately. Thanks. Really boring stuff, but good networking. Miss you. 5 minutes later, I sent another text. Forgot to mention, I'm in Tyler for a client meeting. Small world. Maybe we can grab dinner. This time, her response took longer. Oh, wow. I'm actually pretty booked up with conference events. Rain check? Of course. What hotel are you at? Maybe I can send flowers to your room. No response. I waited 10 minutes, then called her directly. It went straight to voicemail. Interesting, Joel observed. She's avoiding you. Because she's here with Trey, and she knows it. I started the truck. Let's take a drive around the property. The resort was sprawling, with multiple buildings and a golf course. We drove slowly through the parking areas, and I kept my eyes open for two specific vehicles, Cassie's white BMW and Trey's black Ford truck. We found them in the parking lot of the resort's most expensive building, parked side by side like a matching set. There's your smoking tool, Joel said. I pulled out my camera and started taking pictures, license plates, timestamps, the resort sign in the background. Then I called the front desk again. Hi, I'm wondering if you can help me. I'm looking for a friend of mine, Trey Bowers. He said he might be staying with you this weekend. Let me check. Yes, Mr. Bowers is in the honeymoon suite. Would you like me to connect you? The honeymoon suite, of course. No, that's okay. I'll surprise him. What room number is that? I'm sorry, sir, but I can't give out room numbers for security reasons. I thanked them and hung up. Joel was grinning at me. The honeymoon suite? Really? Trey's got a sense of humor, I'll give him that. We spent the next hour documenting everything. Photos of the cars, the building, the resort signage. I even managed to get a shot of Cassie and Trey through their room's window. They'd left the curtains partially open, and they were clearly not discussing real estate. By the time we drove back to Dallas, I had enough evidence to end my marriage and destroy Cassie's credibility permanently. But I still wasn't ready to make my move. Because Cassie had taught me something important that weekend. She'd taught me that I wasn't predictable after all. I was patient. And there's a big difference. Monday morning, Cassie came home from her conference, glowing with satisfaction and full of stories about the exciting seminars she'd attended. She showed me the conference swag she'd supposedly collected, a tote bag and pen that I later discovered could be ordered online for $12. But I played my part perfectly. Concerned husband, interested in her career, happy that she'd had a good time. I even made her favorite breakfast and asked detailed questions about the speakers she'd supposedly heard. You seem different, I told her over coffee, and more energetic. She smiled and kissed my cheek. I think I'm just finding myself again, you know? The open marriage thing has been really good for me. I'm glad, I said, and I meant it, because every word out of her mouth was another nail in her coffin. That afternoon, I met with David Chen at his downtown office. I brought 3 flash drives full of evidence. The Tesla videos, the home security recordings, photos from Tyler, GPS tracking data, and Joel's background report on Trey. David reviewed everything methodically, occasionally shaking his head or making notes. When he finished, he leaned back in his chair and whistled softly. Ethan, this is the most comprehensive evidence package I've ever seen in a divorce case. It's like you were building a federal prosecution. I wanted to be thorough. Thorough? You've documented every detail of this affair down to the minute. You have video evidence, audio recordings, witness statements, financial records, and third-party corroboration. Cassie's lawyer is going to take one look at this and advise her to settle immediately. What about the prenup clause? David smiled grimly. The infidelity provision is ironclad. Based on this evidence, Cassie will forfeit her claim to all joint assets, including the house, your business equity, and the investment accounts. She'll be entitled to whatever she brought into the marriage 20 years ago, which, according to your financial records, was about $15,000 and a Honda Civic. And custody? Joint custody was contingent on moral fitness. A judge is going to look at these Tesla videos and her recorded statements about lying to your daughters, and Cassie's going to be lucky to get supervised visitation. I nodded slowly. When can we serve the papers? I can have everything ready by Thursday. But Ethan, I have to ask, are you absolutely sure about this? Once we file, it becomes public record. Your daughters are going to find out about their mother's affair. I thought about Mia and Lexi, my two girls who still believe their parents were happy. They'd be devastated. But they'd be more devastated if I let this continue and they found out later that I'd known and done nothing. Cassie made this choice, I said finally. I'm just making sure she lives with the consequences. All right then, Thursday it is. I left David's office feeling lighter than I had in months. The weight of secrets and surveillance was almost over. Soon, everything would be out in the open. But first, I had one more surprise for my predictable wife. Thursday morning started like any other day. I woke up at 6:15 and made coffee with exactly 2 sugars and checked my emails. Cassie was still asleep, probably exhausted from another late-night book club meeting that my GPS tracking showed had taken place at Trey's apartment. I showered, ate my predictable breakfast of toast and scrambled eggs, and kissed Cassie goodbye before leaving for work. She mumbled something about having dinner with Van that evening. At exactly 10:30 a.m., David Chen's process server knocked on our front door. I watched it happen from my office computer through the home security cameras I'd installed so many months ago. Cassie answered the door in her robe, hair messy, looking confused. The server identified himself, handed her the divorce papers, and explained that she had 30 days to respond. Cassie's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, anger, and finally panic. She slammed the door and immediately started pacing around the living room, frantically dialing her phone. My desk phone rang. Cassie. Ethan, what the heck is this? What's what? I asked calmly. These papers, divorce papers, with all these crazy accusations about adultery and oh, those, yeah. I decided you were right about me being too predictable. Thought I'd surprise you. This isn't funny, Ethan. You can't just... Actually, I can, and I did. You might want to read the whole document, especially the part about the prenup clause you triggered. There was silence on the other end of the line. I could picture her frantically flipping through the pages, looking for the clause she'd forgotten existed. Ethan, we need to talk about this. This is all a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, Cassie. I know about Trey. I know about the Tesla. I know about Tyler. I know about everything. Another silence. Longer this time. You've been spying on me? I laughed. Actually laughed. Spying? Cassie, you've been having an affair in my car, in my house, and on my credit cards. I didn't have to spy on you. You practically sent me engraved invitations. Ethan, please. We can work this out. The open marriage was your idea. The open marriage was your idea. I just gave you enough rope to hang yourself with. And congratulations, you managed to tie a perfect noose. I could hear her crying now, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no regret, no second thoughts. What about the girls? She asked. What about them? They'll live with me, in the house you're about to lose. They'll go to the same schools, keep the same friends, maintain the same routines. The only thing that's changing is that they won't have to watch their mother lie to their father anymore. You bastard! You planned this whole thing! No, Cassie. You planned this whole thing. I just documented it. She hung up on me. Within an hour, my phone was ringing constantly. Van, Jen, Marcus, even Trey himself. I let them all go to voicemail. I had work to do. At 5:30, predictably, I drove home. Cassie's car was gone, but Trey's truck was in my driveway. I parked behind it, blocking him in, and walked into my house. I found them in my living room. Cassie was red-eyed and frantic. Trey was pacing like a caged animal, his usual swagger replaced by obvious panic. Ethan! Cassie jumped up when she saw me. Thank God. We need to talk about this rationally. Hello, Trey, I said, ignoring my wife. Enjoying the honeymoon suite last weekend? Trey stopped pacing. Look, man, this doesn't have to get ugly. Ugly? I set down my briefcase and loosened my tie. Trey, it's already ugly. You've been screwing my wife and my car, spending my money, and planning to steal my assets. The only question now is whether you want to make it uglier. Ethan, please. Cassie stepped between us. Trey and I, we love each other. This isn't some fling. We want to be together. Great, I said. You can be together in whatever cardboard box you can afford after the divorce is final. Trey's face darkened. You think you're so smart, don't you? Setting us up like this? I didn't set you up, Trey. You set yourselves up. I just paid attention. You recorded us without our permission. In my own house, with my own security system, documenting crimes being committed on my property. Completely legal. Crimes? Cassie looked confused. Adultery's still a crime in Texas, Cassie. Misdemeanor, but it counts. Plus there's the credit card fraud, the identity theft, I didn't steal anything. You used my credit cards to pay for hotel rooms where you had love with another man. That's fraud. You lied on legal documents about your whereabouts and activities. That's perjury if it ever goes to trial. Trey stepped forward. His fists clenched. You son of a witch. You think you can destroy people's lives like this? I looked at him calmly. Trey, I'm not destroying anyone's life. I'm just refusing to let you destroy mine. This isn't over, he said. Yeah, it is. And if you ever come near my family again, if you ever contact my daughters or try to interfere with my life in any way, I'll make sure every gym in Texas knows exactly what kind of man you are. Linda Morrison's story will be just the beginning. Trey went pale. He hadn't known I'd found Linda. Get out of my house, I said quietly. Both of you. Cassie, you can come back tomorrow to pack your things. Bring a witness. I don't want any accusations about missing property. Where am I supposed to go? Cassie asked. I shrugged. That's not my problem anymore. Maybe Trey's studio apartment has room for two. They left without another word. I watched from my window as they drove away in Trey's truck, probably heading off to figure out how their perfect plan had fallen apart. But I wasn't done yet. The best part was still coming. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, asset freezes, and social media drama. Cassie hired a lawyer, an expensive one she couldn't afford, who took one look at my evidence and advised her to settle immediately. She refused, convinced that she could somehow fight the prenup clause or claim that I'd entrapped her. Her lawyer withdrew from the case after she couldn't pay his retainer. Trey, meanwhile, had his own problems. Linda Morrison had agreed to go public with her story about his pattern of targeting married women. 2 other victims came forward after seeing her interview on a local news station. Apex Fitness fired him, and his Instagram account, once full of motivational posts and shirtless selfies, went dark. But the real entertainment came from Cassie's former friends. Van, Jen, and Marcus had all been subpoenaed to testify about the wine night conversations they'd participated in. Suddenly, none of them wanted to be associated with Cassie's affair. Van deleted all their photos together from Instagram. Jen blocked Cassie's phone number. Marcus pretended he'd never met her. Joel found the whole thing hilarious. You know what the best part is? He said over beers one Friday night. They're all scared you recorded them too. I did record them. They were in my house, talking about helping my wife cheat on me. Of course I recorded them. Are you going to use those recordings? Only if they lie under oath, but I don't think they will. They're too worried about their own reputations. My daughters, Mia and Lexi, were handling the divorce better than I'd expected. They were old enough to understand that their parents weren't happy and young enough to adapt to the new normal. Cassie's increasingly erratic behavior over the past few months had already prepared them for change. Dad, Mia said one evening while we were making dinner together, are you okay? I mean, really okay? I looked at my 14-year-old daughter, so serious and concerned, and realized that I was more than okay. I was free. Yeah, sweetheart, I'm really okay. Are you? She nodded. Mom's been different lately, angry and distracted and always on her phone. It's actually quieter now. Lexi, who was setting the table, chimed in. Will we still get to see Mom? Of course. She's still your mother, and she loves you both very much. This is between her and me, not between her and you. It was true. Despite everything Cassie had done to our marriage, I wouldn't poison my daughters against their mother. They'd figure out her character on their own, in their own time. 3 months after serving the divorce papers, the settlement was final. Cassie got exactly what the prenup specified. The $15,000 she'd brought into the marriage 20 years earlier, plus half the value of her old Honda Civic. Everything else, the house, the business, the investment accounts, the Tesla, even the joint checking account, stayed with me. Cassie also had to pay my legal fees, which were substantial given the complexity of the case. She moved in with Trey temporarily, but that relationship imploded within weeks. Turns out, when you're broke and homeless, you're a lot less attractive to a gold digger. Trey moved back in with his parents in Plano. Cassie got a studio apartment in a questionable part of town and a job selling insurance over the phone. The last time I saw her was at the final court hearing. She looked older, tired, defeated. When the judge read the final settlement terms, she didn't even react. She just signed the papers and walked away. I felt nothing watching her go. No satisfaction, no regret, no lingering love or anger. She'd become a stranger to me months ago, the moment she decided that 20 years of marriage was worth less than a few months with a personal trainer. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I was having dinner at Romano's Steakhouse, the same restaurant where this whole thing had started. I was with a client discussing a security contract for his new office building when I spotted a familiar group at a corner table. Van, Jen, and Marcus were huddled together, talking in hushed tones. Van looked older, less polished. Her Instagram empire had taken a hit when her association with Cassie's affair became public knowledge. Jen had gotten divorced herself after her husband found out she'd been helping Cassie lie and cheat. Marcus was just Marcus, still confused, still following whoever would pay attention to him. They saw me and immediately looked away, suddenly very interested in their salads. I finished my meeting with the client, shook hands, and made my way toward the exit. But as I passed their table, I couldn't resist stopping. Van, Jen, Marcus, how's everyone doing? Van looked up reluctantly. Oh, hi, Ethan. How's Cassie? I heard she's doing well in insurance sales. Jen shifted uncomfortably. We don't really talk to Cassie anymore. Really? That's too bad. You all seem so close. Marcus, bless his simple heart, actually answered honestly. Yeah, well, things got weird after the divorce. She kept asking us to lie for her in court and stuff. Van kicked him under the table. I smiled. Well, I hope you all learned something from the experience. Like what? Van asked defensively. Like the difference between predictable and stupid. I left them sitting there, probably wondering if I'd recorded that conversation too. Outside in the parking lot, I sat in my Tesla for a moment, thinking about how much had changed in the past year. My marriage was over, my wife was gone, and my life had been completely upended. But I wasn't the same man who'd sat in the same restaurant a year ago, listening to his wife mock him in front of her friends. That man had been passive, trusting, willing to accept disrespect for the sake of keeping the peace. This man, the man I'd become, was something different. Still methodical, still thorough, still reliable, but not passive. Never passive again. My phone buzzed with a text from Joel. Beer tonight? I've got news about a certain personal trainer. I texted back, what kind of news? The kind that involves outstanding warrants and a very angry ex-girlfriend with a restraint order. I started the car and pulled out of the parking lot, grinning. Apparently, Trey's pattern of targeting vulnerable women had finally caught up with him. Some people never learn. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I had my daughters, my business, my house, and my self-respect. I had everything that mattered. And if anyone ever called me predictable again, I'd just smile and agree. Because predictable men don't usually win. But patient men who pay attention, who document everything, who plan carefully and execute perfectly, those men always win. Cassie had wanted unpredictable. Instead, she'd gotten something much more dangerous. She'd gotten a man who was smarter than she thought, more observant than she realized, and far more ruthless than she'd ever imagined. She'd wanted to play games with a boring, predictable husband. Instead, she'd gone to war with a security expert who knew how to gather evidence, build a case, and destroy an enemy completely. Predictable, my foot, I said out loud and drove home to my daughters.